The room went silent the moment the small predator cub sank its teeth into the human woman's sleeve. Gasps echoed across the observation chamber. A chair scraped loudly against the floor as one of the alien scientists jumped to their feet. "Pull your arm away," someone shouted. But the woman didn't move. Inside the massive glass enclosure stood one of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, a young cub of the Valkyrie predators. Even as babies, their instincts were deadly. Their species had wiped out entire colonies when threatened. And now one of them was chewing calmly on a human's arm. The alien researchers watched in pure horror. On the control screens, warning lights began to flash. "Sedation team, get ready," a technician yelled. But then something strange happened. The human woman smiled. Instead of panicking, instead of pulling away, she gently tugged her sleeve back, almost like she was playing a quiet game. The cub tightened its tiny jaws for a second, then growled softly, as if refusing to let go. The room exploded with confused voices. "Is she insane?" one scientist whispered. Another shook their head. No human should survive that bite. But the woman still looked calm. Slowly, she crouched down so she was at eye level with the predator cub. The creature's glowing amber eyes stared straight into hers. For a moment, no one in the room breathed. The cub's tail flicked. Its claws tapped lightly against the floor. And then, instead of attacking, it tugged the sleeve again. Like it wanted to play. The control room froze. Because predator cubs didn't play with prey. Not unless something about the prey felt different. And right now, every alien in that room was starting to realize something terrifying. The human wasn't afraid. And somehow, the predator cub wasn't treating her like food. The control room erupted with arguments. "This is impossible," one of the alien biologists said, staring at the monitors. "Valkyrie cubs do not behave like this." Inside the enclosure, the small predator was still gripping the human woman's sleeve with its tiny but razor-sharp teeth. But it wasn't tearing. It wasn't attacking. It was holding on. Almost like it didn't want her to leave. The woman let out a quiet laugh. A real laugh. The sound echoed strangely through the chamber, making several of the observers shift nervously. "You shouldn't encourage it," the chief researcher warned through the speaker. "That creature will grow into a planetary hunter." The woman glanced up at the camera. "But right now," she said calmly, "it's just a baby." The cub growled softly again and gave another playful tug on her sleeve. One of the scientists zoomed the camera closer. What is it doing with its tail?" he asked. Everyone leaned closer to the screens. The cub's tail was moving back and forth rapidly. Excitement. The realization sent a wave of unease through the room. "Predator cubs only show that behavior toward their pack," someone whispered. Another researcher slowly shook their head. "That human isn't its prey." The cub finally released her sleeve, but only for a second. Then it stepped forward and pressed its head gently against her arm. Several alarms suddenly flashed across the monitors. "Warning," the system announced. "Alpha predator approaching enclosure." Every alien in the control room froze. Because there was only one thing more dangerous than a Valkyrie cub. Its mother. And right now, the massive shadow of the adult predator was moving closer to the enclosure door. Inside the chamber, the cub happily rubbed against the human's arm. Completely unaware that its mother was about to walk in. The alarms grew louder. "Alpha predator entering containment zone," the system repeated. In the control room, no one spoke. They were all staring at the massive door on the far side of the enclosure. Slowly, it began to open. A deep, heavy thud echoed through the chamber as something enormous stepped inside. The Valkyrie mother. She was nearly 3 times larger than the cub. Her dark armored scales reflected the white laboratory lights, and her glowing amber eyes scanned the room with terrifying focus. Every alien observer felt their stomach drop. One wrong movement, and the human inside would be dead in seconds. "Sedation team ready," the chief researcher whispered. "Ready," someone replied nervously. Inside the enclosure, the cub suddenly perked up. Its ears lifted. Its tail began wagging even faster. "Mama," one of the scientists muttered quietly. The cub happily ran toward the giant predator. The mother lowered her head slightly, letting out a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the glass walls. Then she noticed something. Her gaze slowly shifted toward the human. The room held its breath. The woman was still crouched where she had been before. Calm. Completely calm. "Why isn't she backing away?" one technician whispered. The Valkyrie mother took one heavy step forward. Then another. Each step made the floor tremble slightly. The cub ran back to the human and nudged her arm again, almost excited. As if introducing her. The gigantic predator stopped only a few feet away. Her glowing eyes locked onto the human's face. For several long seconds. Neither of them moved. Then the mother opened her massive jaws slightly. In the control room, someone slammed their hand on the emergency button. "Sedate the predator," they shouted. But before the command could activate, the human woman slowly raised her hand and reached toward the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. The entire control room erupted. "Stop her," someone shouted. But it was too late. Inside the enclosure, the human woman slowly reached out her hand toward the enormous Valkyrie mother. Every alien watching knew what should happen next. Predators like this didn't hesitate. They struck. Fast. Brutal. Final. The sedation team hovered over their controls, ready to trigger the tranquilizers at the first sign of attack. But the woman didn't look afraid. Not even a little. Her hand moved gently, slowly, the way someone might approach a nervous animal. The giant predator's amber eyes followed the movement carefully. The cub stood proudly beside the human, its tail flicking excitedly. Almost as if it was saying, "Look who I found." "Why isn't it attacking?" one scientist whispered. No one answered. The mother predator lowered her head slightly, releasing a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the chamber. Several alarms flickered again. "Threat display detected," the system warned. The room tensed. One wrong move, and the human would be gone. But instead of pulling back, the woman spoke softly. "Easy there, big girl." Her voice was calm. Warm. Strangely gentle. The giant predator paused. Then something happened that no one in the room had ever seen before. The massive creature leaned forward, just slightly. The human's hand finally touched the top of its armored head. Gasps filled the control room. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the predator released a low rumble. Not a growl. Not a threat. A sound almost like approval. The cub bounced happily beside them. And suddenly, one of the alien researchers leaned closer to the screen. "Wait," he whispered. Everyone looked at him. "What?" His eyes widened slowly. "That's not aggression." He pointed at the predator mother. "That's a bonding response." The room fell silent again. Because if he was right, then the most dangerous predator species in the galaxy had just done something impossible. It had accepted a human. As part of its pack, the control room had gone completely silent. No alarms. No shouting. Just dozens of alien researchers staring at the impossible scene unfolding on their screens. Inside the enclosure, the human woman was sitting on the floor now. The Valkyrie cub had climbed into her lap, happily chewing on the edge of her sleeve again. And the giant predator mother? She was lying beside them. Watching. Not hunting. Watching. Every alien in the room understood how unbelievable this was. Valkyrie predators were legendary across the galaxy. Entire military fleets avoided planets where their species lived. They didn't form bonds. They didn't trust outsiders. And they certainly didn't let another species touch them. Yet here they were. A human, calmly petting one of the most feared predators in existence. The chief researcher slowly removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. "How?" he whispered. No one answered. On the screen, the woman gently scratched under the cub's chin. The little predator made a soft rumbling noise, clearly enjoying the attention. Then something even stranger happened. The massive mother predator shifted closer. Her enormous head lowered until it rested beside the human's shoulder. The cub chirped happily. And the woman laughed quietly. "You're jealous too," she said softly. The mother predator released another deep rumble. Not threatening. Comfortable. Almost protective. One of the younger scientists in the control room leaned forward, staring at the data scrolling across the monitor. His eyes widened. "Wait." The others turned toward him. "What is it?" He pointed at the biological readings. The cub's stress levels dropped the moment the human entered the enclosure. The room went still again. Then he swallowed nervously. And the mother's heartbeat. He looked back at the screen. Is syncing with the humans. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations feared these creatures. But in this room, something no one had ever imagined was happening. A human wasn't fighting the predators. She was calming them. And soon, the galaxy would learn why. The control room remained silent as the data continued to scroll across the screens. Heart rate. Stress signals. Neural responses. Every reading told the same impossible story. Inside the enclosure, the giant Valkyrie predator rested peacefully beside the human woman. The cub had now fallen asleep in her lap, its tiny claws loosely gripping her sleeve. The woman gently stroked the creature's back. "See," she whispered softly. "You're not so scary." The chief researcher slowly shook his head. "No, that's not it." Everyone looked at him. He pointed at the biological analysis appearing on the monitor. "Look at the pheromone readings." One of the scientists leaned closer. Then his eyes widened. "Wait, that's a human calming signal." The realization spread through the room like a shockwave. Humans had evolved on one of the most dangerous planets known to the galaxy, Earth. For millions of years, their ancestors had survived among predators. Not by being the strongest. Not by being the fastest. But by understanding animals. Bonding with them. Taming them. Dogs. Horses. Even creatures far more dangerous. The chief researcher looked back at the screen, where the massive predator mother quietly watched over the human and her cub. "They're not sensing prey," he said quietly. "They're sensing a caretaker." Inside the enclosure, the woman smiled as the cub stirred in its sleep. The giant predator slowly lifted her head, and gently nudged the human's shoulder. Protective. Accepting. Family. Across the galaxy, countless species feared the Valkyrie predators. But on that day, inside a quiet research facility, the truth became clear. Humans didn't just survive among predators. Sometimes, the predators chose them too.